जी का खालसा वाहिगुरू जी की फतेह। सिख चैनल ਦੇ ਪਿਆਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕੋ, ਸਿੱਖ ਚੈਨਲ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ-ਬਹੁਤ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਸਰਦੂਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਮਲਵਾ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਜੀ ਆਇਆਂ। ਪਿਛਲੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੈਪਟਨ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਗਿੱਲ ਹੋਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਆਰਮੀ ਦੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਕਿਹੋ ਜਿਹੀ ਹੈ। ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਤੇ ਕੁਝ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਰਹਿ ਵੀ ਗਈਆਂ ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਆ ਕੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਆਰਮੀ ਨੂੰ ਜੁਆਇਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਲਈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਕੀਤੀ, ਉਹ ਅੱਜ ਫਿਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ। ਆਓ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰੀਏ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜੀ ਆਇਆਂ ਕਹੀਏ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਕੈਪਟਨ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਅੱਜ ਫਿਰ ਸਮਾਂ ਕੱਢਣ ਦਾ। ਆਪਾਂ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਆਰਮੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਾਫੀ ਦੇਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਕੈਪਟਨ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਚਿਰ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਕੁਝ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਰਹਿ ਗਈਆਂ। So let's start today just to briefly talk to us the barracks you are in. What do you actually do in the barracks?
Okay, so the barracks, and every military unit has a barracks. It's a place for military personnel to live and train, in essence, and for them to work. Because military people, and your viewers will probably know this, we're not deployed all the time on operations and exercises. So the barracks is a place for us to be centrally, where we live, we eat, and we work together. So what this allows us to do is train in terms of our weapon skills. With our rifles, our armories are based here. A lot of people will be working on vehicles. So we have a variety of different vehicles, from Land Rovers through to trucks, through to tracked vehicles, if you're in tank regiment, for example. And it's an opportunity for those people to service those vehicles, because just like your car requires a mechanic and an MOT every year, these vehicles also require that level of servicing. And the tradesmen, the actual soldiers, service those vehicles. So, but for me personally, in the 16th Air Assault Brigade in Colchester, we've got some 2,500, 3,000 people on our barracks in Colchester. We've got about 4 regiments based here. Each regiment contains about between 800 and 900 people. And it allows us, to be in a place where we can have central control as well, so that when a mission comes around, we can inform everybody pretty quickly, and then everybody gets a message, and they can then get their gear, and off we go out the door. For me personally, in barracks, what do I do? Because my job has 2 separate channels, I guess, if you want to call it that. I have 2 degrees of responsibility. One is my home responsibility, and one is what I do when I go away on operations. So in barracks, my role is I am what's called an SO3, a Staff Officer Class 3. So that's what captains are usually classed as in a brigade headquarters. If you were a major, you'd be a Staff Officer Grade 2. If you were a colonel, you'd be a Staff Officer Grade 1. So as a Staff Officer Grade 3, my responsibility is I'm in charge and control of communications and media for the entirety of 16th Air Assault Brigade.
Right.
So what that means is the Ministry of Defence has a central communication strategy, and I work towards that communication strategy to achieve the right goals and in line with the right campaigns that we're running throughout the year. What that also means is that internally, all communications that happen internally are my responsibility. And also externally, the Army is quite a large organisation, and I also reach out to our external organisations and branches in order to relay messages and ensure that we are being represented in the correct way. I also have a responsibility for the brigade's social media strategy. So we are on pages such as Instagram. You can just search for 16th Air Assault Brigade. We are on Twitter. We are on Facebook. So everything that goes on those pages, all the content that you might see there, goes through my desk, and I'm in control of all of that. So that's pretty much what I do in barracks. Other than that, then we all have our military responsibilities. So you probably can't see from your screens, but my hands are a bit dirty today. And that's because I've just rushed over here from cleaning my weapon. So I've got
Right.
gun oil all over my
Okay.
hands at the moment. I had a chance to go and clean that. But these are the daily responsibilities of being in the military. You know, you will have to look after kit, you will have to do your day job, and you will have some other responsibilities thrown in. Your central role, but then you could also be a projects officer for several different projects that surge up in that moment in time. Some are quite ad hoc. Some are, well planned. So that's our life typically in barracks.
So you're not just sitting around in the barracks. So as people
No,
think, oh,
actually,
in barracks, they're not
let
in
me.
the fighting anywhere. They're just sitting around. So it's
No, no,
quite a handful what you do.
yeah, and also one thing to add to that, like typically today, we wake up at 7 o'clock, and as a unit, we were out doing physical training. Everybody had 16 kilograms of weight in their backpacks, and we all went out for a 4 miler. And that's something that we do 3 times a week in my unit. Everybody exercises together, so you see your colleagues in many different sort of like scenarios. You see them once they're sweating out on the ground. You see them once they're at their work. You see them, once they're shooting their weapons. So it is a very interesting mix.
Okay, so within the barracks you have your units, and you have your units, and other soldiers are in different units. So what does an actual each unit do, or a particular unit do in the barracks?
Okay, so my unit, 16 Assault Brigade, we are classed as United Kingdom's Global Response Force. So we are at the forefront of the defence strategy for the United Kingdom.
Right.
And we are in such a position because we are what's held at very high readiness. If you imagine the triangle of the army, we are at the peak of that triangle. So we are at the forefront of the brigade strategy. So the units that we have here are very highly trained individuals. So one of our elite groups is called the Pathfinders. These are just literally 2 steps below Special Forces. And again, if you look at our Facebook channel, you can see what the Pathfinders do. These guys do what we call halo drops, high altitude, low opening, and hey-ho drops. So parachuting at high altitude, low opening, and high altitude, high opening. These guys will free fall out of an aeroplane with all their gear on, weapons, etc. And they will be the forefront of the brigade's recce force, reconnaissance force. And they will go and set the ground to allow the main body of the parachute regiment or elements of the Gurkhas who are attached to us to then parachute out the ground, or do what we call an air assault or a rapid air land. This is when the aircraft goes in. Typically what we use is a C-130. It's also known as a Hercules, which is a Royal Air Force aircraft. And they would go and land rapidly in a conflict zone or anywhere else in the world, and troops would get off at haste at the back of the aircraft. So that's what we do. And the regiments that we have within the brigade we have the 2nd Battalion, the Parachute Regiment, the 3rd Battalion, the Parachute Regiment, and we have the 4th Battalion, the Parachute Regiment, which is a reserve unit. What we also have in our unit is the 1st Battalion, the Royal Gurkha Rifles, which is a great unit to have because it brings our diversity levels up quite high, having an Asian unit within 16 Assault Brigade. And these guys are highly trained and highly specialized infantry riflemen. What we also have within our brigade is artillery. And this is artillery where you have the large artillery guns that can be transported via helicopters and also by C-130. We also have signals because you have to communicate when you go out on various radio systems. We also have logistics. So we have a unit that has a number of trucks, that we can deploy at short notice. We have a medical regiment. The medical regiment actually contains a field surgery unit within it, so that the guys get the right level of care should they require it when we're out on operations. And also these facilities can also be utilized by what we call host nations. If we had to support a host nation. The third type of, capability that we have is engineers. And not a lot of people would know about the engineering capability of the army. And these guys have the ability to blow up bridges, to prime them with demolitions. They've got diving skills and they've got construction skills. So we have a lot of plant equipment within our regiment as well, just in case we had to build our own runway, for example. We can parachute, believe it or not, we can parachute little bits of plant equipment on the back of an aircraft, so that the guys then parachute behind it, and they've got that equipment there, such as like tractor diggers or anything else like that. So 16 Aerosol Brigade is actually designed to be ready for a wide variety of operations. It's not all about conflict, and it's not all about war. What we also do is NEO, was it NEO, which is a non-combatant evacuation operation, where we would have to go and maybe rescue a number of British personnel or NATO forces or NATO personnel who are trapped in different parts of the world where there's conflict going on. We can also do HADR, HADR, which is humanitarian and disaster relief. So, you know, such places where there might be earthquakes or a hurricane or something like that, and destruction basically has gone on in one way or another, and then they require our support. So we've got a number of skills, and we've got, you know, people who are maintain that very high readiness so that they can get to the aircraft, and then off they go, jumping out the back of a plane or do rapid air land, and yeah, we do our best then to try and resolve the conflict or assist in which way we can.
Okay, that's very, very complex things what you're explaining. So what responsibility do you have when you are deployed on an operation? You know, so you could be deployed on the other side of the world, or you could be deployed even here, coronavirus things. So we can be deployed anyway. So what is your responsibilities when you're deployed?
Right. So when I'm deployed, so we have what we call soft effects and hard effects. The hard effects are what is like the military activity, if you want to call it, maybe the combat side, you know, so it's almost like guns blazing, or, you know, people doing helicopters landing, and what we call offensive action.
Right.
So that's the kinetic effects. What I deal with is the soft effects. In essence, I try to win the war without fighting.
Okay. Okay.
And what that means for me is, what I would try and do is I would try and influence local communities and communicate with them to let them know about our higher message. Like, you know, what are we here to do and how we plan to go about it. I will also get involved in what we call outreach programs, such as, you know, we've defined them as key leader engagement. So where you talk to like local leaders of a local place, you understand from them what their grievances are about the conflict that's going on, and you try and resolve things through negotiation, and you try and resolve things by speaking to the key influencers to try and, you know, bring about some sort of negotiation and some sort of resolution to the conflict. Yeah. We would always try to do something peacefully before we tried the kinetic way. So it's just the mantra that we have. And last time I spoke about, you know, the army being a force for good. And this is one of the reasons why I really am quite passionate about us being a force for good. And this is why I believe in the British Army. Also, one of my responsibilities is that I would write the communication strategy for that campaign for our brigade. And sometimes you have journalists from the likes of BBC, Sky News, or these sort of channels that want to come along with you to document what's going on and then report back. And this is how they do their live feeds or anything like that. So it's my job also then to host and to ensure that these journalists are kept in a safe environment, and then that they have everything that they require. So they're able to then give a good, clear, honest, and independent account of what's going on in that conflict zone. So yeah, it's a lot of things, you know. So I don't have one set job role, as it were, but it's almost a mishmash of several different responsibilities.
That's very interesting what you said. So when we see things on the screen, some a war zone, a guy with a press thing jacket wearing, and he or she is reporting when there's a live ammunition is being fired. So that is a responsibility you are talking about, that those people who are with you and they are kept safe and they can report safely and accurately what's actually going on there.
Precisely that. Yeah, that's right, Sadul. And you know what? If in the future SIKH Channel wanted to come along, then I'm sure we could organise something for you guys as well.
I think that's a challenge. I would love to do that if something was going on and we want to see you. Even I think we're probably filmed you in barracks, or even, whatever the exercises are. I think that would be a very, very good idea for the people to see, and the life in
Yeah.
the army, not just firing bullets. Obviously, let me just move on. Can you just tell us about the history of airborne forces in the United Kingdom?
Right. Yeah. So my unit is an airborne unit. You do have airborne units across all of NATO forces and across various armies. And when we say airborne units, what we typically mean is that we've got the ability and capability to parachute,
Mm,
either low opening, so like what we call LLP parachute, which is on like a line that opens when you jump out the back of the aircraft, or you have what's called like free fall parachuting, which I'm sure everybody's seen. When you just jump out the aircraft and then you pop open your parachute. So that's one aspect of airborne forces. The other aspect of airborne forces is using aircraft, either fixed wing or rotary, so helicopters, in order to make an insertion or an extraction. So my unit we are specialized in dealing with airframes and helicopters. So that's what makes us airborne. Airborne forces were created actually back in World War II. So it was
mm,
back 22nd of June 1940s when Churchill, who was the prime minister at the time, he
mm.
requested from the War Office that a corps of parachutists be created in order to counter the threats posed in World War II. So from that, which happened in 1940, in 1941, that's when we saw the first airborne division being created. And then the
Right.
parachute regiment, were then created in 1942. But what's interesting is, and what I absolutely love about this unit, is the fact that we had that happening in Europe. We had the airborne forces being created in Europe. But then at that time, a lot of your viewers will recall that India was still under
Mm,
the kind
mm.
of like administration of the United Kingdom. So
Yeah.
in the British Raj over in India, we also had the 44th Indian Airborne Division being created. And that was
Right.
created in 1945 in a place called Secunderabad. Secunderabad, I think now, is renamed Hyderabad or has been swallowed up by Hyderabad.
Okay.
And those units, they actually did a parachute drop. The very first one, I think that happened during World War II in Asia, which was into Yangon in Myanmar, which is now Myanmar. At the
Mm.
time, it was called Burma. So they did parachute drop there, but luckily, once they did the parachute drop, they didn't find much enemy because I think the Japanese had actually already retreated at that point. So
Mm.
it's very interesting, the fact that we had the airborne forces being created here in Europe, and we all know about the D-Day landings and
Yeah.
how big and a mighty force that was to counter the German threat. But then you also had the threats going on in Asia, where you had the Indian Airborne Division jumping to counter the threat from the Japanese. And in that Indian Airborne Division, you did have the Gurkhas of the day, you did have the Hindus, the Sikhs, and the Muslims that all contributed to those forces. So
Mm.
I think we have a really rich history, and that's what makes me really proud to be in this unit. And that's why also with the Gurkhas currently attached to this unit right now,
Mm.
our diversity levels are really high, and they're a lot higher than any other units within the British Army. So not
Right.
only are we at the forefront of the United Kingdom's defence strategy in being the global response force, but we also have the highest number of diverse and Asian individuals within our brigade, up to about 20%, 25%, which I think is remarkable. So a really cultural place
Really,
to serve your military time. Yeah.
I'm really proud of you on that. You see, I think the one issue or aspect of the army is keeping fit. And,
Mhm.
that must be something when you said you get up at 7 o'clock and all through the day. But fitness is the key for every piece of work you do in the army. And how do you maintain that fitness? And with people who are watching us, our viewers, how can you give them the guidance or some advice how to keep fit, especially in the Mahamari, as we call it, the Corona pandemic we're going through? What do you want to say?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so if you're not fit, you're not going to make a very good soldier. Yeah, that's the way it is. Military life is such that you have to carry real heavy weapons on the battlefield. I mean, a rifle, we use an SA-80A2. That's our standard issue rifle. It weighs about 3.2 kilograms. It may not seem heavy to start off with, but when you put in a magazine of 30 rounds into that, it gets heavier. When you're then what we call tabbing, so tabbing, TAB, it actually stands for Tactical Advance to Battle. So it's a type of training that we do where we've got our kit on and we're walking about 8 miles, and it replicates an advance into battle. When we're doing that type of training, that weapon system can get very heavy in your arms because you're holding it for so long. So you always have to be really physically fit, no matter what. And these are the basic assessments that go on within the Army. Now, I can't tell your viewers on what to do because I don't want to be held responsible if they gain an injury. But what I will tell you is what we do. So we have a lot of different types of training that we do. We train about 3 times a week. One of those sessions will be what we call combat PT, where we replicate what we would do in battle. We wear our body armor, we wear our waist webbing, and we wear our backpacks. And then we will go on an 8 mile, which is, we try to cover about 8 miles in about 2 hours, carrying all of our kit. And all of our kit will weigh between about 16 kilograms, depending on what unit you're in, up to about 40 kilograms, depending on what test you're doing and which unit you're in. So, example, if you were in the parachute regiment, you would have to do a test where you're wearing up to 40 kilograms worth of equipment, and you're expected to go a certain route for a certain distance in a certain time period. So their levels of fitness are so great because they carry so much different types of equipment that they parachute out of the aircraft with. For me, as a staff officer, luckily, I can get away with just carrying 16 kilograms, which is enough for me. So I'm happy with that. But this training is really important. It's not just the fact that we train hard for battle, but recently what we've seen coming into the Army is things like agility, breathing techniques, so mindfulness, all of this type of stuff. We all incorporate it into our PT sessions. And certainly we've seen a lot of different yoga practices and moves coming in where, we practice, what we call good, helpful PT. It's not all about, the days of old during like World War II, I guess, where people were just shouting at you and saying, right, get through the mud and do this and do that. It's actually very tailored and specific so that you get you either gain strength from it, agility, or some type of endurance. Now, we do train on camp quite a lot, but the other places that we train is in the mountains. So we go to Wales quite a lot, Scotland and other areas where we can be presented with the right terrain that's going to give us the right challenges, because we can't just go around on a flat surface all the time. So we really take a lot of pride in going up the mountains. And Pen y Fan is a real regular place, and a lot of your viewers may go to Pen y Fan in South Wales, and they'll see a lot of military people training there. But what's also really important, I think, about fitness in general is that I think we as Sikhs have kind of like an obligation and a responsibility to keep our bodies fit and healthy, because it kind of like goes in line with our Sikh beliefs and faith. I don't think being obese, helps anybody.
No.
Or lacking fitness. So because I was in Punjab not too long ago, and I did see maybe obesity levels rising a little bit over there, and it is I think keeping a healthy mind really requires you to keep that healthy body. Watching your blood pressure, being conscious about maybe developing diabetes. One thing that we also always use as a measurement is the BMI index, the body mass index.
Yeah.
So that's always a good marker to see where you are. And I think all your viewers could probably, number crunch into somewhere on that they find on Google, what their height and weight is, and they see where their BMI level is, and then train accordingly. We also do a lot of swimming, which is a great non-impact exercise. So if people are into that, then doing that. Cycling, a lot of people are into cycling. But what you have is we have our main events that we do on camp. But a lot of the people that I work with, they also have a passion for sport. Like I used to play rugby for my school team. I grew up kickboxing. So I used to kickbox at the European level, and I entered a number of competitions. It's not something that I do nowadays, but it's something that I'd really like to get back to, perhaps after this COVID times are over. But yeah, there's a number of things that we can do. Typically the Army fitness test, the real basic one, used to be run a mile and a half. We don't do this anymore, but it used to be run a mile and a half in under 10.5 minutes. And that was
Okay.
always a big marker that I used to suggest to my friends when they used to ask me about military fitness. If you can run 1.5 miles in 10.5 minutes, then I think you're on an upward trajectory in terms of your fitness.
Okay. Okay, Captain Saab, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद ज़्यादा क्योंकि you have given us a lot of time and a lot of information what you do, and we wish you all the best. And if I may salute for what you do, and we are grateful. We are really proud of you, and I look forward to talking to you again sometime. And really would like to come and see you at Barracks or where you are. And thanks for giving us the time today. Very, very much obliged for you. ਸੋ ਜੀ ਇਹ ਸਨ ਜੀ ਕੈਪਟਨ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਆਰਮੀ ਦੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਦੱਸ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸੋ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਕੇ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਅੱਗੇ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਜੁਆਇਨ ਕਰਨੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਦਾ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਹੱਥ ਰੱਖੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿਸੇ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀ ਗਲਤੀ ਕਰ ਗਿਆ ਹੋਵਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਮਾਫ ਕਰ ਦੇਣਾ ਆਓ ਵਿਦਾਇਗੀ ਦੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਬੁਲਾਓ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ